created equally. .ke and .com are essentially the same. So now I want us to listen to our first substantive panel. And I'm privileged to invite Rosemary, a lady that does not introduction to this room. I am not sure which hat she will be wearing today. She will confirm. But Rosemary, please come and invite your panel. And a round of applause as Rosemary comes. So Rosemary is going to lead a discussion on legislation and governance in the internet ecosystem. I'm not sure if we could get a better moderator for that session, but Rosemary and the internet probably synonymous. So you are in good hands. Rosemary, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you very much, Bob. It's very good to hear that, lawyers are validated. They keep calling us learned friends. Now you see why. A lawyer and the internet are synonymous, but happy to be here. I'm going to invite my panel. And today, our panel is about legislation and governance in the internet ecosystem. And we have a distinguished panel before us today. First is Colonel Evans Ombati from NC4, Karibu Sana. Second, we'll have Adam Lane from Huawei. Adam, have I said that right? I've tried. Next is Rose Mosero, Deputy Commissioner from the ODPC, Karibu Sana Rose. And we're also honored to have Victor Kapiyo from KICTANet. And finally, Anthony Mosero from KPMG, Karibu Sana Anthony. So he asked which hat am I wearing today? Today, here as a board member of KeNIC, happy to support this whole initiative and very proud of this event that we put together. I also serve as a data protection officer at KCB, but here at my hat as a KeNIC board member. Okay, so I guess we'll get straight into the questions. So question number one goes to, no, not even questions. Let's introduce, let our panels tell us who they are. Panelists.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Colonel Evans Ombati. I'm the Director, National Computer and Cybercrimes Coordination Committee. And yes, thank you.
Thank you. My name is Adam Lane. I work in Huawei, Kenya, working on government relations and policy related matters. Very happy to be here and a big supporter of KeNIC and the other partners here. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Rose Mosero. I'm the Deputy Data Commissioner at the Office of the Data Protection Commissioner. It's great to be here and I look forward to this panel discussion.
Right, good morning. My name is Anthony Mosero. I'm Director at KPMG, Cybersecurity and Privacy. I'm also the President of ICMEC Kenya chapter. Pleasure to be here.
Hamjambo. Jina langu ni Victor Kapiyo kutoka KICTANet.
Asante sana, Victor, for reminding us that we have two national languages. So, Kiswahili, that is. So question number one, finally, to Colonel Ombati. The National Cybersecurity Strategy was recently released. Can you share with us a brief overview of the strategy and the impact it's expected to have on the internet ecosystem, especially the legislative and policy side?
Very well, thank you very much, Madam. And I wish to quickly respond to this, but before I do, I want to appreciate the developments in the Kenyan landscape in the areas of the management of ICTs, in promoting investment and ensuring that they are safe for use by all Kenyans, and they're also safe to our neighbors and the globe. It's important to appreciate that recently we launched the National Cybersecurity Strategy, and this strategy is based on quite a number of legislations and policies that the government of Kenya has already put in place. The National ICT Policy, we have the Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act 2018. We also have the Data Protection Act 2019. We also have the National ICT Master Plan. And again, it is based on some of the critical challenges that the country, the organizations, and the people of Kenya are facing in the current realm of technological advancements. We appreciate that almost all of us, all organizations, and many nation states are really dependent on ICTs. Therefore, the area of operation, the domain of operation has changed to technology. What that means? It means that criminal organizations as well are in that area. And therefore, most of the acts of crime are either aided by ICTs or directed towards ICTs or directed to people, organizations, and critical infrastructure through ICTs, either through the internet or through the computers or through other means. So the highlight of the strategy is based on those key aspects that I've just mentioned. You are all aware that conflict will never end as long as we exist as human nature. Therefore, as I've already said, the form, the medium through which these conflicts are likely to be perpetrated is the area of ICTs, the internet. So the strategy looks at those aspects, and one of the key strongholds is to put up structures from government to private sector to individuals and enable them to be able to be robust, to protect themselves and protect the systems and protect the country, and by far protect the whole world. So we are talking of governance structures. At the top, we have the government establishing the NC4, the National Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Coordination Committee, in which I'm a director, and we have a secretariat. And through that, we have formed various other committees, and I'm sure incorporated the Office of the Data Protection Commission, the Kenya Revenue Authority, the ICT Authority, NCIC, and all other stakeholders as we go along. And importantly, we are also looking at enhancing the security of our critical information infrastructures. At that point, I want to mention that KeNIC, they are aware. I'm sure I talked to the CEO and confirmed to him that KeNIC and whatever they are managing is considered to be a national critical information infrastructure. And this was gazetted by the government of Kenya. And therefore, what that calls for is whoever is operating that kind of infrastructure must consider security, must consider resilience, must consider managing, mitigating, and responding, and being able to recover so that we have as minimal or no time of loss of any communications or domains that have been registered by them. The other thing that we have also created or established is by putting it as on the Gazette notice, I'm able to call KeNIC and ask why a certain domain is either committing a crime or details of whoever who is handling a criminal activity out of a domain that has been registered. And this is also global. We have a global partnering with various other global registrars, and we are able to manage. Remember, crimes are conducted by human beings or organizations or groups of people. So that is what we are really looking at. I'm not looking at a malware being crime. A malware is a weapon that has been used. It's like a bomb. A bomb will not bring itself here. It must be a human being behind it. So that is the perspective we are looking at. Then the other aspect on the strategy is to manage crime and reduce the risk. we are all aware that all ICTs by their manufacturing and setup, they have risks, they have vulnerabilities that are inherent. And some of these come about by either some of the systems not being updated and being upgraded as may be necessary. And we should be alive to that fact that these systems must always be checked for vulnerability assessment, audited, so that any gaps that may arise are managed. And we all have a stake in this, and it's one of the strategic objectives of the strategy. The other very important aspect is capabilities and capacity. And I'm very happy to see that some of these conferences or workshops are aligned to that perspective, because we also need to learn to appreciate what do we need to do, even as individuals, as organizations, and as government, to protect ourselves online, to use the ICTs in a manner that safeguards both your interests and the interest of the organizations and the interest of countries and the globe. So it's in that perspective that capacity building from the universities to the institutions, to training staff, and making ourselves aware of the risks of the threats, and making ourselves aware on what we need to do to protect ourselves is one of the key pillars, and requires partners and partnerships across all sectors to be able to manage. The other important aspect is capabilities. We are all aware that, to be able to protect yourself in your own compound, you need to put a gate. So we are talking of firewalls. We are talking of, tools to be able to detect intrusions. And they cut across from the national level to organizations and to individuals. And finally, the strategy looks at enhancing cooperation and collaboration. And again, you may realize that this area cuts across all of us as a nation, as a region within Africa, and as a globe in the whole world. So we must be able to participate and contribute on some of the conventions, from UN level to the African AU level to the national level, and we'll be engaging as much and much more enhanced engagements so that we can be able to get solutions that will improve this ecosystem. I think that summarizes the whole strategy. It's available on the online. It's been shared, I think, accordingly, and we are still trying to improve on how it can be implemented. Many thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ombati, and I think we are very grateful. Having heard from our cybersecurity regulator, I want us to switch to Adam Lane from Huawei. I'll keep trying. So, and the question to you, Adam, is based on global best practices, what reflections do you have regarding the standards that should be adopted in the legislation and governance of the internet ecosystem? Right from a structural perspective and even cybersecurity perspective, what are your thoughts so far?
Thank you, Rosemary, and it's great to hear from the Colonel as well about the strategy. It's very impressive to see that it's been launched. I think it's a very good document, definitely an upgrade on the previous one that I think was several years ago. I think as many people here will know, the internet is basically built on standards. The only way that your device can connect to a network, that can connect to a server, or can connect to software is based on various standards. And I think that's been really key to the success of the internet and how it's been developed globally, and how most of the world is able to be within reach of network or able to connect, which is really impressive, actually. Huawei is one of the world's biggest equipment manufacturers, providing much of the backbone and much of the network, both fixed and mobile network across the world. And for us, I think standards have been very, very critical. We're heavily engaged in all the relevant groups at a national level, regional level, and international level. And I think cybersecurity has always been at the heart of the standards. But I think people have come to recognize, as technologies become so important to operations of lives, of businesses, of economies, how much more important it needs to be, and how maybe less attention was paid to it in the past and needs to be paid to it today. And I think one of the major issues around cybersecurity is the issue of trust. There's no one company in the world that actually makes any particular product completely. Everything has a supply chain. Everything has an ecosystem of different people providing software, providing components, whether it's batteries, which themselves are made of chemicals, or other chargers and plugs and all kinds of components. And so actually, when we look at cybersecurity, from the beginning of raw materials to product, through to users, to software, and so on, the issue of standards is really, really important. If people are to trust the products that they're using, they need to be known, they need to know that they are based on common standards. And where we've seen the benefit of standards is they can be agreed by the whole industry, and then they can be measured, they can be defined, and they can be tested. So actually, a few years ago, as people began to recognize the importance of 5G in the global industry, Huawei and many other of our competitors and our peers began to work together with GSMA, which is the mobile industry group, as well as 3GPP, which is one of the major global standards setters around the world that works closely with the ITU, to develop something called NESAS, which stands for the Network Equipment Security Assurance Scheme. So I encourage everyone who's interested in standards, interested in cybersecurity, to have a look at it. It's a very interesting initiative. It's very, very simple, but the idea is that it defines network equipment standards, like what is secure, but also defines the processes, right? How businesses or how organizations implement as well. So not just the actual equipment, but how you utilize, implement those equipment and how the equipment fits into the broader scheme of things, right? Between different sets of equipment, between the use of that equipment and so on. And what's I think really important about this system is that all the standards can be defined and measured and verified. So you get various labs that get accredited that can test equipment or even test processes by going into businesses and doing those kind of interviews, looking at documents, looking at processes, looking at systems. And then they can verify whether something meets the standard or doesn't meet the standard. And that's really, really critical. And so that's something that we think is really important. Then people know, oh, I can trust you or I cannot trust you, because the third parties looked at your equipment, looked at your systems, looked at your processes and said, yes, you can trust it. And then, of course, you can look at how you can then have things interoperable with each other, which is another key aspect of standards, to say something can fit together, something can work together. And hopefully there wouldn't be flaws, not just in the equipment, but in the relationship between some equipment and some software and the user, and so on and so forth. So I think this has been a very important trend in the last few years, the growth of standards and the applicability and utilization of standards amongst the ecosystem. And I hope the industry here maybe is not so involved in global or even regional standards, unfortunately. I know there was the first African member of the IETF, if I'm getting it right, who works at Liquid, which is really a great achievement. There was recently a lot more involvement from the Kenyan side in the Africa Telecommunications Union. They had some meetings recently in Zambia. I know the CA had a team there. They always have a team, actually. So the CA does a really good job, actually, of representing Kenya at a regional and global level. But we really hope more players in the ecosystem can get involved. I know, for example, Jamii Telecom came to the meeting in Zambia recently, and the Safaricom, the other companies are also getting involved. And that's really, really important. Kenya also has various other working groups that then feed into the African and the global level processes too. And I'm sure it's good for everyone here to get involved with those processes and those ecosystems to understand how the global standard setting process works. So maybe I've spoken a bit too long, but I think it's very interesting and something that's often quite neglected, but it plays a very important role in the internet being available and being secure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adam. We really appreciate. And next, I'll go to Rose. So Rose, data protection is a key part of the legislative framework and governance in the internet ecosystem. And I guess in Kenya from the year 2019, and I guess now we're somewhere, and I'm speaking to my personal regulator. So I'm acknowledging their presence. And also, so the question is, from a legislative framework and governance perspective, what pointers would you give from a regulatory perspective to guide players in the internet ecosystem towards compliance? Guys, listen, this is really important. I know everything else was important, but yeah.
Thank you for that. And I'm glad that Colonel Ombati and Adam went before me. I think when we look at data protection, it's not too diverse, or it's not a divergent aspect or thing from cybersecurity. I think when we look at cybersecurity, there are some things within that really just transfer very easily and seamlessly into data protection. One of the things that I think makes a bigger difference is that cybersecurity looks at effectively protecting people, but also commercial interests and the like, safety. But there is a human aspect that comes into play when you look at data protection. As you would know, data protection actually enhances or looks at protecting the right to privacy, which is not just a right in the Constitution of Kenya, but also a universally accepted right that is in the ICCPR, as well as very many other universal human rights documentation agreements, conventions alike. So one of the things that has been said repeatedly here is that I guess being so interconnected and being so connected, we're consistently giving up our data, and that's a price really that we pay for being so connected in today's world. From a regulatory perspective, I think the internet and regulating the internet or data protection within the internet is very difficult because it doesn't just deal with one player. Everyone must be involved. So from a regulatory perspective, we're looking at having, the players that Adam Lane has mentioned actually think about the individuals that will effectively be the end users of these products, ensuring that you're embedding data protection from the very onset, from the thinking conception of these technologies all the way to the actual end user, thinking about what information are you giving, are you protecting yourself? And so, regulatory wise, we are regulating the people who are making these devices, the people who are offering services, so the data controls and data processors. And there is very specific provisions within the Act, or obligation within the Data Protection Act, that specify the things that you need to do. And obviously embedding in design is one of them, but also ensuring that you're using state-of-the-art technology based on obviously cost, based on where we are with respect to advancements in technology, based on the information that you're actually processing, and ensuring that you put that in place. One of the things that we've noted, even as we go through the process of registering data controls and data processors in Kenya, is and pardon me, I'm not putting anyone's applications down, but is the lack of consideration of the risks and safeguards that are actually taken into account with respect to processing personal data. And this is something that we're calling and something that we're asking, and soon we'll be enforcing issues with respect to, if you're collecting my information, if for whatever reason I have to go onto your website and there's information that's being transferred, how are you protecting me as an individual? And if you do not see that, then already you have failed with respect to your responsibility with in regards to data protection. This is not to say that the obligation or the responsibility is solely on you. I think as individuals, as entities, similar to how we operate here in this forums, it's also, or it behooves us to also educate the people who are using the technologies that we produce, the websites that we're using, educate them on how to protect themselves, because this ultimately will reflect on you if there's a data breaches or a breach or cybersecurity breaches, kind of Ombati has mentioned. The person that we'll be looking at is you. If you've educated the people who interact with your systems from the get-go, then it's likely that you're reducing the risks to them, but also the reducing the regulatory risks to yourselves. It's an ongoing journey, and I think one of the things that is important for Kenya, at least, data protection is relatively new. We're walking this journey together. And so we're here as a regulator, very open to discussing ways in which you can improve your system, as well as hearing the challenges that you're having with respect to data protection compliance, and thinking through your client journey and thinking through the individual's journey with respect to how you're safeguarding their information. So I'll stop there for now, Rosemary.
Thank you very much, Rose. I hope we listened, because it's a critical part of compliance that is fairly new and not many of us are compliant yet. So if you're not registered, kindly register either as a data processor or controller. Yeah, so over to this side of the panel. Sorry guys, it's been quiet, but now it's your turn. So I'll start with the gentleman on my extreme right, Victor Kapiyo. So the Kenyan internet ecosystem has robust legislative engagements and case law that have impacted the internet ecosystem. What are your high-level thoughts on the progress so far, and what opportunities do you think lie ahead to ensure the next best practice from a human rights perspective? The reason I asked Victor this question, it's because we wear a common hat, and it's called KICTANet, the Kenya ICT Action Network, where we work to make sure that as we move towards the internet ecosystem, we also create thought leadership around internet and policy. So share your wisdom, Victor. They are waiting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
all of you for listening. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's my first time attending the DNS forum, and great thoughts from the speakers who have just spoken. I'd just like to highlight a couple of things. I think 90% of the people here are from business, right? And if you ask yourself, previously, when you talk about, the human rights aspects, we've always focused on them being, happening, in the rural areas, it's the communities down there, or it's governments. But increasingly, the role of businesses is becoming important in the respect promotion of human rights, right? Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you ask ourselves, what are we all doing? We're all promoting or advancing one form of human rights or the other, whether it's our economic rights as businesses, whether they're, privacy, whether it's security, all of these are human rights. And therefore, it's important for businesses to ask themselves, to what extent is their business also advancing human rights? Are they aware of their human rights impact? And are they, complying with the obligations that are there for businesses within the ICT sector, for example? And just to highlight that in 2011, the UN developed what is called the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights. And it sets out, fundamental principles that businesses need to take into account under a three-pronged framework. And the first aspect is based on the state's obligation, to respect human rights. And second is the role of business, because we appreciate that, businesses have a role to play. And so businesses also have a role in promoting greater respect for human rights. And the third aspect is on creating effective remedies. You will realize that, in order for your business to be human rights compliant, I know Rose has spoken about privacy, but privacy is one right. Ombati has spoken about security. Security is just one other right, that we all have the right to freedom, to security. So if you look at the broader aspects, all these rights are interconnected. And for example, when your internet is down, maybe somebody wanted to express themselves on an important issue, then by that service being down, then you've affected someone's right. If you're not paying your employees well, then you've breached their labor rights. If your customers are not getting quality of service, then that's a consumer rights issue. If children who are using your network are being exposed to harmful content, then you're violating children's rights. If you have poor cybersecurity practices and your network or your servers are breached, then people's privacy rights are affected. So as businesses, we must start thinking, what is our human rights impact? What are we doing to promote our rights within our services? And to what extent are we taking steps and measures to refrain from causing further violation? And when those violations occur, what remedies are we providing within our services to make sure that the customers whose rights are violated are able to get effective remedies? I know it's a requirement for ISPs, for example, to have a complaint mechanism. But you must ask ourselves, to what extent are those mechanisms actually delivering justice for your customers? When people call and say, I can't access the DNS is down and the website can't be accessed. If Ombati says there's a certain website that is promoting terrorist content, how effective is the remedy mechanism for the audience who are being exposed to that kind of content? And what measures can the intermediary, who is either the registrar or the ISP, take? So it's important to start considering those. And I think I just want to highlight a few challenges that we have now in the sector. And I think most of these have already been addressed. But I think I just want to highlight one, that increasingly big data is becoming common. We are all giving up our data in one way or the other. And we must start asking, what obligations must we put in place for intermediaries who are handling, whether it's governments. We just saw the Huduma number thing where we gave everything to government. And now we are seeing, telcos want to share our data with, I don't know who. Everybody's picking up our data, and just, is a regulatory framework alive? I know we have a data protection law, but how effective is the enforcement to make sure that the ordinary users' rights are protected? I'd just like to ask, how many here have at least 3 devices that are connected to the internet? Oh my goodness, the whole room, right? So all those are IP addresses, yeah, and devices and data. The Internet of Things is reality now, right? If you all have more than 3 devices, you can imagine how much data could be compromised. So we've all connected to free Wi-Fi at the hotel. We didn't ask any questions. What obligations should this hotel have to the traffic that is coming through? Are we safe? Are they aware that they need to make sure that that network has integrity, and aspects around encryption, the security of the personal data, to what extent are intermediaries, providing tools and services that promote the security of networks and the communication within devices, so that then things like hacking cannot happen. There is the aspect of harmful content, whether it is disinformation. We just came from an election. Rosemary, I am concluding. From an election, we saw a lot of disinformation, hate speech, and that kind of content. What are we doing in terms of laws? We have some laws, but we're not enforcing them effectively. We are not able to investigate and provide remedies for people who are exposed to this kind of content. And you can see the effect they have on a democracy such as ours when content is changed and people can abuse networks. And I think the other aspect is we must also put a magnifying glass to the relationships with law enforcement and operators. Most of the time something happens and the police will give a call and say, give us the details. Where is the place of due process in that mechanism when we have laws that provide for surveillance and due process is not followed? So we must start finding a balance between to what extent do we protect the privacy of the individual and the right of society to be free from crime and the right to have due process followed. So I think those are important aspects. The other one is just on the rights of children and how we can protect them. Aspects around discrimination of people, whether it's in our services, how we offer them, to whom we offer them, how representative is our staff, are we discriminating people with disabilities, are we making efforts to ensure that there is inclusion in the services. And finally, in terms of the supply chain, I know Huawei is one of our device providers, are we investigating whether they're using, free labor and stuff like that? Are we looking at our supply chain, whether it's terms of devices, whether it's services, the people that we work with, that they're actually complying with human rights obligations, so that then as we deliver our services, we've not violated human rights in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, for the candid reminder about the human beings behind the internet and the obligations of all of us in industry as we engage. So over to somebody who advises the businesses in front of the internet, or are they also behind? So Anthony, what are the common technical compliance gaps that you see in your day-to-day activities as you serve the Kenyan business community? And then I'm asking about those things that keep us as a nation lagging from a legislation and governance perspective in the internet ecosystem. What could we do better? Over to you.
Hello? Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And let me say it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to all the conveners. And it's great to share the stage with my also good friends in the industry as well. So my take and the pressure of speaking last is that the other speakers have already covered most of the things I wanted to talk about. But maybe just to focus on particularly what in my view would be common thematic areas that come out. When we talk about some of this compliance and doing the right thing, as we may call it, and advising many organizations and some of the things we do around cybersecurity and data privacy. Key issues that I'd like to point out ideally will also ideally come to the fore. And the first thing I want to mention is that particularly in this battle with cybersecurity related issues and also data privacy related issues, I believe it's more knowledge dependent, right? Having that understanding of what can go wrong and being able just to understudy such very well. The first one would be cyber hygiene from a cybersecurity perspective. And I see many cyber experts in the room, and they would agree with me that most of the cyber issues that we normally have are ideally cyber hygiene dependent, right? These are very basic, fundamental housekeeping issues, things like patch management. You don't need to invest a lot, particularly to buy a solution for that, right? Things like passwords, things to do like making sure that people are doing the right things. So that is one of the areas that we normally see a lot of issues. And here's also where we need to talk about, having effective compliance to standards, frameworks, and some of these policies. And I like what also Adam Lane mentioned, standards ideally should set the tone in terms of what's expected, right? And that is one of the focus, particularly when we talk about if we are to drive this and have this posture maintained, then that compliance is extremely important. You'd also see, and I know this is a very common said thing, that cyber governance and having cyber frameworks that ideally prescribe best practice. And one of the unfortunate things is that we've seen sometimes is basically just a very fancy document that's gathering dust. There's very little effort to ensure that some of these things have been addressed. So having this in place is extremely key. And then the other one is also understanding situational awareness, understanding what are some of the cyber attacks and what is the anatomy and the mindset of a cyber attacker. Like Sun Tzu says in The Art of War, if you want to be guaranteed your victory in any battle, you have to understand your enemy, right? We normally run typical red team assessments and vulnerability assessments and penetration testing. I'll tell you, if I would take a report and I remove the name of one bank, and I take another report for another bank, and I take another report, remove the name for a different organization, key things will stand out. The issues are very similar. The issues are very, very the same, because some of these tactics are pretty much similar. We have young, students in university who can do these things very well. Some of my mentees are actually very good hackers, right? And you find some of these successful ones are normally opportunistic in nature. Is because there are things that are lying very low, and that's why organizations now fall prey to that. And then looking at things like ransomware, again, knowledge dependent. What is a typical kill chain of a ransom? It would span maybe from people clicking the wrong links, right? And that is where awareness comes in place. Are we able to disseminate this information clearly that people really understand? Because cyber awareness is supposed to drive the right behavior. And are we holding people to a higher standard? And when they default, what are we doing about it? In fact, interestingly, and the survey that was done, that there are three typical type of, what do you call them? Insider threats. You'll always have the C, careless Carol, I, innocent Ian, and Mike, malicious Mike, M, right? So careless is someone who doesn't know. So they don't know what to do, so they'll do typically anything. Innocent is they have not been trained. So they do not have an understanding of what ideally should be done. And then the malicious people are the ones we should be worried about. And these are the insiders. And pretty much it's evolved. It's not the guy in the hood with a hoodie. Like there's a gentleman at the corner who has a hoodie and is making me very nervous. Well, just joking. But your insiders ideally would be typically anyone who would be ambitious and probably even malicious enough to take an opportunity, right? And the main, not the only one, but the main motivation is normally economics, right? Because people have realized that they can make money out of this. So those are some of the issues that we also need to understand. What is a typical kill chain? If at all we're talking about safe access to the internet, telling people that you're not supposed to access rogue hotspots, right? Or any public Wi-Fi that you ideally connect to. And these are very many use cases where you'll see people connect to a unsecure hotspot, and then what happens? A ransomware downloads on their machine. And then they also plug into the corporate network. The other thing is also understanding your data. Particularly, number one, your data and also your critical infrastructure. I like what Colonel said, that now we have a clear mapping of the national critical infrastructure. But from an organizational perspective, you'd be surprised. Many organizations don't really understand their critical infrastructure, or they don't even understand the kind of data that they hold until something goes wrong. And even in the spirit of the Data Protection Act, it's very clear what kinds of data ideally would fall within that space of, this is critical data, and this is even personal identifiable data that organizations ideally need to protect. So that understanding and that situational awareness becomes extremely important. The other thing I would also like to mention, it would be things to do with, particularly when we talk about, and as I wrap up, contingency plans and incident response capabilities. What happens when things go wrong, right? And that's one of the areas that also we see there's always a gap between effective coordination and response to an incident, right? Because it's not that people do not know what needs to be done. I think it's that coordination that normally lacks, where you find maybe your server is down or compromised. What ideally is the next step that should be taken? And I like even what Communications Authority have done with the KICTAnet, because this is now bringing together a facility that ideally can coordinate when we're having some of these incidences in Kenya, how we respond to it, and so that people can also understand. And they do the quarterly reports so that we can learn and see, what are some of the attacks that are coming. And like I said earlier, there is nothing new under the sun. Some of these cyber attacks that we see, in fact, they're not very new, like typical like ransomware. The first instance of a ransomware was in 1989. And this was a gentleman who was doing medical research and decided to just do a very malicious campaign. He went, it was in Stockholm, WHO, those diskettes, flash disk, what do you call them? Diskettes, right? Great. And ideally created a virus and distributed. And imagine a room full of scientists. Everybody wants to understand. And what he said is that we've gotten a breakthrough in medical research against HIV, right? So all those researchers were extremely curious. So what did they do? The typical thing that anyone would get a diskette is that they plug in, right? Same to what people normally done. There's a time we did a social experiment and we bought like 100 flash disks. I remember there was Sahara, the ones that normally shine. You could literally see yourself. And what we did is we went to corridors, the parking lot, and we threw them around. What is a typical next thing that someone will do when they collect a shiny flash disk? They plug it in, right? Human nature, that curiosity. And that is the art of deception. And that is what cyber criminals prey on. So that medical research, all those scientists ideally got a virus, and there was a note that for them to get their files, it was actually hidden. It wasn't something too novel. But back then you can appreciate the brains that went into that, and told them that you need to send this money to this address. What are we seeing 30 plus years later? A reincarnation of the same thing. What they're doing is just taking a different flavor. It's only that right now it's powered by things like Bitcoin. So it makes it a bit more sophisticated. So what we are saying is that when you talk about some of these issues, they're very much similar. And what we need to also look at is how we can create awareness and how we can sort out the basic hygiene and low-hanging fruits to address the matter. Thank you.
Asante sana Tony. So for maybe 5 minutes or less, we're going to throw this back to our lovely audience. Do you have any questions? Yes. Thank you, Ben. So we're going to have mics. Welcome, Davies. How are you? Karibu sana. Oh, and Joe? No. Online. Okay, fine.
Thanks. Yeah, look, we've had a very good discussion about regulations and obligations around cybersecurity and data protection. But, you know, it's a two-way thing, right? When a crime is being committed, you expect to have somebody that will help you out. And so it seems to me we might be missing the point a bit. You know, a couple of years ago, there were some Kenyan hackers who hacked a number of banks and got away with serious crimes and been arrested and bailed and arrested and bailed and arrested and bailed. Eventually, they were imprisoned in Rwanda, hacking a Kenyan bank, for hacking a Kenyan bank, and they got 7 years jail time. You know, recently, I think it was last year, one of our sister companies, we found a fake website impersonating one of our shareholders, and saying that they would acquire land for towers and you pay out land and asking for people's land details. But it was a complete scam, you know, impersonation website. We went to the DCI cybercrimes and to the right person, you know, reported this. It's an offense under the Cybercrimes Act as to impersonate websites. And they basically said, nah, until someone's been defrauded, you know, I can't do anything and open a case until you can give me somebody who's been defrauded. We didn't have anyone that had been defrauded. We found, you know, a trap waiting to defraud people. But maybe it's a reluctance of the police to prosecute white collar crimes. It seems that might be the case in Kenya, but you know, it's a two-way thing, right? The industry and data owners and people who have critical infrastructure, we understand the obligations on us, right? But we also expect some support from security organizations when we need it. And that, I'm not feeling that isn't happening. Yeah.
Colonel, do you have a quick reflection on that?
Thank you for that question. And I think we may have discussed it some times back. And I'm sure CEO KeNIC could be outgoing, could also testify that he receives quite a number of calls from my office. One of the important aspects I want to put across on this is we are developing this ecosystem and also putting up structures and mechanisms to be able to help any Kenyan or any person within this country who has fallen into this kind of situation, because we have quite a number of scammers. Some fellows coming up with a blog, with a registration form, and they are able to take you through, maybe it's a recruitment they're trying to do, maybe they know many Kenyans don't have jobs and they have impersonated like maybe government ministries, key agencies and companies just to defraud Kenyans. And, you know, the CEOs will pick up their call, and maybe if they find the NC4 contact, they'll let me know. And quickly, our team will be able to appreciate the issue. And sometimes maybe it's a .com domain or blog, and it's hosted somewhere in California or outside the country. So the question of jurisdiction comes into play, because we are like, how do we engage with the company that is hosting this to be able to give us the details of the perpetrator? Because you can actually see there's a crime here and it's affecting a Kenyan organization or Kenyan government. So the basis on this, maybe to just cut it short, is that the strategy provides for this. And it's fairly a baseline guide on coordinating issues from the domain managers, the domain registrars. I'm sure I can tell you, and this is on confidence, that as long as it's a crime. It's a bit difficult to differentiate because you get some of those fellows and they will tell you, I was just trying to survive. You take them to court, they will be billed 200 or 2,000 shillings. And maybe the crime they committed is quite substantive in terms of the monies they have stolen.
True.
So there is a number of things that we need to engage and bring sanity to this environment. One of the things I want to confirm to all of us is they are human beings. There is a human being or a group of human beings or group of organizations or a nation or a nation-sponsored person behind every crime. Please note, make sure you get my words very clear. There is a human being or groups, whether state or state-sponsored, behind every crime.
Okay.
So that is what we need to look for.
Thank you very much. So I'll have very quickly 1, 2, 3. We'll ask all the questions, and 4, ask in 10 seconds or less,
Okay,
and then we'll quickly answer in equal time because we have to move to.
mine will be very brief. Data protection. It's common practice in this city specifically. When you go to a place, you get a book. They ask you to put in your name, your ID number, and your phone number. Before you know it, you're beginning to get marketing things for places you've never been to. Before you know it, you've been registered in a political party you've never even heard about. How are you planning to protect us?
Next question, Davis.
Thank you, Rosemary. Mine is obviously business related. Yes, we're talking about security, cyber security, but it's security at the end of the day. And just like vaccination, for instance, because that's something that we all really now identify with. The size of the padlock and the cost of the padlock must be in tandem with the value that you're protecting. So I think it is important for, first of all, for everybody to be involved in the discussions and in understanding the value that they are protecting, so that then they can contribute to the security measures, whether it may be cybersecurity, maybe data protection, because there are costs associated with this padlock. So it is important for every Kenyan and every African, for that matter, to understand the value that they are protecting first. And then we can discuss the cost of that protection and that security. Thank you.
10 seconds, thank you. Kivuva, then finally, the gentleman there.
Thank you, Rosemary. So my question is to Colonel Ombati on due process. So when you are doing the search and seizures or trying to get the bad guys, do you follow due process? Like, for example, get court orders before you clamp down on these people? Or do you use government force without legal, or what legal do you use in trying to get these bad people?
Okay, and final question. And final 2 questions, one from online, I guess.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much. My name is Makambito. My question goes actually to Colonel Ombati. And it goes on the aspect of what Mr. Kapiyo talked about, the human rights dimension. And my mind goes back to, sorry to say, but just the last concluded election, and where the issue of cyber security came up. Despite the inroads that we made, the kind of things that happened in Bomas showed us that actually we are very rudimental and that we are very backward as a country. And people are very embarrassed about what happened. When people are installing such kind of organization like IBC, they're installing their software and even sourcing for maybe the kind of tenders actually that they do. Do you actually make sure that this thing is supposed to be tamper-proof so that actually the trust of Kenyans should be restored, because this trust is very important. It kills the spirit of the country and it lets us down in such a very bad way. You as an organization, what do you actually do? Thank you.
Asante sana. Yeah, you know, we're a very political affiliated. I don't know which words to use. The English is going back to where it came from at this point, but I'll have Joel very quickly ask the online questions, then Matano finally.
Thank you, Rosemary. I'll just summarize. I think a lot of people have bashed Colonel. I'll just add to him that there's a coordinating committee. How does that coordinating committee interact with each other, especially since a lot of those guys have different systems? You have your KRA, one system, someone else, but they're all in this committee. So how do you make that happen? To the Data Commission Office, I think registration started 14th of July. How is that going? Some people feel it's a bit slow. Are there any challenges you're facing? And the third one to Huawei, since you said you're big in terms of equipment, how have you leveraged the aspect of bringing equipment versus some of the laws we are seeing in terms of data protection? There's a fear that sometimes we're being spied on. Is there anything you're looking at from that aspect? Thank you.
Asante sana. Finally, let it come here very quickly. To Matano. Here, straight.
Thank you very much, moderator. Perhaps this is to my fellow regulator. As a young regulator, I think this immediately is enforcing compliance. Now, the law requires any data processor not to transmit people's personal data without consent to third parties, without consent of the data subject. Now, you have, in fact, in terms of the entities you regulate, almost everybody from companies to small businesses to government are all data processors. How do you intend to walk along with them so that instead of levying, you know, humongous fines on them, you get them to comply? Because that is the intention. Because I don't envy the responsibility that you've been given, because you are dealing with hundreds of millions of data processors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Heart to heart from one regulator to another. Yeah, Professor Kashoda, finally. And this is the last question. So even if you put your hand up, I won't see
And
it.
this is to Colonel Ombati. As the commander-in-chief of the cybersecurity forces, how do you recruit, train, and keep them ready? Because I have not heard us talk about the forces themselves.
Yes, Colonel. Wapi curriculum? Panel, very quickly answer the questions. I think there's a question for that side. I don't know what happened to us, but it's okay. Yeah, so answer all your respective questions in 30 seconds or less. Okay, 1 minute for Colonel because he has many.
Well, I will try to quickly respond to these questions, but fundamentally, I will wish to refer you, if you get time, and this is those who are here and those online, to have a glimpse of the national cybersecurity strategy, because it sets a very good fundamental basis for managing most of the questions that we've received. It's online at nc4.go.ke. Kindly look at it because it sets a very good framework and aspects of coordination and what we're looking at. Question number one, we are talking of the due process for prosecution. That's provided by the CMCA, the Computer Misuse and Thank you. We have not changed the laws. We have not changed the mandates of the security organs doing this business. So once a crime is reported, is handed over, and I guess, and I also want to mention that in my office, I have officers from National Police Service, I have officers from Kenya Defense Forces, I also have officers from the National Intelligence Service. and also have public officers from the office of the AG. On secondment, I have somebody on attached desk from ODPC. I have officers from almost all the key centers of government. So aspects of managing the process is as per the laws that exist. And I'm sure we've done quite well, and wish to confirm that the trends of small hackers within the country has greatly improved, and you can testify this. If you want to try, maybe try and commit a crime and you'll see how the process goes. The other aspect that is very important is also you got to realize that laws are made because of issues and challenges that we are facing. Remember, for you to have a law, it is based on a challenge, and most of the laws are formed out of that. We must appreciate that the processes of human rights, privacy, and security has been a consideration for almost all the acts and the laws that we've come up with. And you could confirm that the computer misuse and cybercrimes, one of the fundamental expectations of this law is to ensure that the human rights are protected and maintained. And even the existence of security agencies, security organs, governments, is to try and promote the aspect of human rights, ensure we have a peaceful and stable environment for people to operate, sit, wherever you want to do, you can do it freely and fairly, as long as you do not infringe other people's rights. And that is now where we come in. You could be wanting to sit, but when you're sitting, you sit on somebody. And then that person will complain and will follow the law to try and manage that crisis. So the aspects of security by design, by systems, that's what we are looking at. And I want to mention to my friend there, who moderator, you said was a bit political, but I want to be confident.
No, I said we as Kenyans are.
Oh, yes,
I was
yes,
acknowledging
yes.
our
Oh,
common-
okay. Thank you. So I want to confirm that the spirit of most of the systems as per the act and as per the strategy is security by design. And I remember Madam here mentioned about the same, and we'll want to ask all our experts, if you are a designer of a system that is going to run a national elections, in our Gazette notice from government, election systems are gazetted as critical information infrastructure. And we expect that they are implemented with secure controls, sufficient controls, aspects of transparency, aspects of accountability, and aspects of being able to audit those systems, whenever something happens, and aspects of being able to recover and get back through backups. So that is what we are trying to entail. And remember, the government sets the policy framework. The implementers are us.
Yes.
So we need to ask ourselves, what are we doing at our individual experts level, at our individual audit level, and all that stuff? The last question, Prof. Oh, sorry. There was an aspect of coordination at NC4. I wish to confirm that NC4, on its for operationalization, we meet with all that committee members from the various agencies, as I've said, every month and on need basis. And remember, NC4 has a secretariat, an entity that is 24/7 in operation. Yes. So there is no gap, and I think that answers the aspects of coordination.
Thank you so much.
The last question, Madam.
Oh, there are many.
Yes.
Please, very quickly.
Yes, I've really tried. Prof there, you asked about the aspect of recruitment, training, and maintaining forces. We are all the forces in this. We are soldiers in this war. Kenyans, the whole global community, we are soldiers in this area.
Okay.
Because the threats cut across, it doesn't care whether you're a medic, it doesn't care whether you're a scientist, but in the Kenyan formation, we want to develop capacity in cyber security. And we have done so far. We are still training young people to be able to train others, and again, put up structures within government to appreciate the aspects of information security and cyber security as a capacity area of HR. And I think that kind of summarizes most of the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll have Adam and Rose, and I'll take that, Colonel, as your final thoughts. Or do you have final thoughts? Sorry? Will you have final thoughts, Ama? That's it.
Well, that was it.
Thank you. Okay. Rose?
All right, I'll start with the question from the fellow regulator, my fellow regulator. With respect to our mandate, yes, we do have quite a wide mandate. There is a misconception that consent is the only way that you can deal with information. It is not. There are very many other avenues that you can transfer data, share data, by utilizing other legal processes such as performance of contract, public authority, legitimate interest, whatever have you. So in terms of what we're doing to actually assist the ecosystem in compliance, we're walking a journey with them. It's going to be a long journey, but we have been targeting specifically the people that we have registered so far, some of them that are not compliant, which will also touch on that in terms of slowness. We are meeting with them this week to ensure that they understand what their obligations are with respect to compliance. We are fairly young and new, and we've only just set up half our structures in terms of staff in July. I think majority of the team that we have now on board, about 39 staff, actually reported between July and August. And so we are now more equipped to actually deal with the processors in terms of helping them walk the journey. But data protection was never an act that was made or developed or enacted to punish. Even the basis of it, having come from the digital economy, is really about boosting business and ensuring that we have a framework that protects both the rights of human beings, individuals that are located in Kenya, as well as ensure that there is continuity of business, is innovation still going on. And so we don't punish on the get-go. We have something called an enforcement notice, which you actually issue to say, we see that you're doing this thing that is incorrect. We suggest that you do this to remedy that contravention. If you do not do it within 30 days, then we go ahead and punish. But if you do comply within the 30 days that is given within the law, then you are fine.
Okay.
With respect, sorry, just quickly, with respect to registration and being slow, we did have some challenges. Initially, we have fixed these challenges. Now, I think most of the things that we're dealing with is really compliance or having the information that we actually want in the registration applications, which again, we'll be dealing with in meetings with those who've applied. Private security entities and people taking your information. This is something that we are dealing with in terms of enforcing, engaging with private security entities, as well as people who effectively process information that is collected from you through usually legitimate means, but they use it for things that are outside of that. So we will be issuing guidance notices as well. And soon you'll be seeing enforcement notices as well as compliance notices to show cause for what people are doing with respect to data.
Okay, thanks so much, Rose. Adam?
Okay, I think I got the best question. So I think I'll just say a few things. I'll be as brief as possible. Certainly, we follow almost all best practices. You know, we've been around a very, very long time. I think one of the global leaders in technology, infrastructure, and solutions, including security by design from the very, very beginning. In fact, in Huawei, if you have any product or solution you want to develop, it can get cancelled at the very, very beginning. There's so many checkpoints along the way if you do not meet any cybersecurity or data protection requirements and standards, and it's really integrated into the product development process. But I wanted to say that first, Huawei sells equipment. We don't manage it or control it. We sell switches, routers, access points, 5G networks, 4G networks, fixed networks, whatever, to somebody else who manages and controls that network. We do occasionally get requested to maintain and repair, upgrade equipment when there's very, very strict requirements related to who can access a network, when can access a network, what laptop you can use. In fact, our laptops even log our keystrokes. Even the cameras are monitoring, work cameras on work laptops are monitoring who's doing what. Like the amount of pressure that we are under is so insane and intense. I imagine we're probably one of the best in the world because there's so much pressure on us in terms of what we do. But yeah, we don't control or manage equipment. After you sold it to an operator or a bank or whoever's buying or using our equipment, we don't control that anymore. What they do with it is up to them. We do, as I mentioned, about the importance of standards. And the critical thing about standards is that they can be verified and audited. Someone can say, it's technology, right? You can look into it and see and take things apart I think even Andy from the UK government knows this. They can take apart equipment. Our customers do the same thing. You know, they should know, no one should trust anyone, to be honest, in this world. You have to, trust has to be based on evidence and actual physical and technical activities and products, not just based on rumors or politics. So we're very confident that our equipment is being trusted. We've been working in Kenya now almost 25 years. Our customers still work with us, both government and private sector, and are very happy to do so. And that trust has been earned through 25 years of hard work. We don't take it for granted. And we do feel like, you know, as somebody famous has said, you know, trust can take a lifetime to earn and a second to lose. So we take that very, very, very seriously. And the last thing I want to mention very briefly is the issue of, you know, we're a global company, there's other global companies in this room and working in Kenya. I think that's a very good thing. Every global company operates by the country, the laws of the country where they're operating. So in Kenya, Huawei Technologies Kenya Company Limited operates by the law of Kenya. It's really irrelevant what any other law says anywhere around the world. We operate by the laws of this country. Every individual, whether me, who are not a Kenyan citizen, is operating in Kenya and working and obeying Kenyan laws. And that's very, very important. People don't always recognize that, but that's the most important thing. And that comes as first thing. So you don't need to worry. That's what I would say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'm gonna have it start that way and then we end here. Just 10 seconds, final thoughts, as in I don't know, tweet size almost. Yeah.
Data protection, as I said, is relatively new. We're here as a regulator, our doors are open. Should you have issues with respect to your compliance, that's actually my directorate. Please write to us, reach out. We're here to help you on your journey to ensuring data protection compliance.
Thank you. Adam?
I would just say we're very open. We're happy to be here, happy to engage with people. If you have any questions, if you want to know more, please feel free to contact us or anyone else in the industry. This is a learning process. We're a broad ecosystem. All of us have to work together and collaborate and learn and share amongst this very important topic. There's no goal, I think, in cybersecurity. It's a journey. It will never, ever end, unfortunately.
Okay, Colonel?
Yeah, thank you. Mine is to call upon all of us to join hands, because the problem we want to solve requires us all a safe and resilient cyberspace, not just in Kenya, but globally, will enable us to conduct our businesses in a better and more improved manner. Thank you.
And actually, we have shared the national cybersecurity strategy on the Zoom link that's going on right now, and we'll also share it here, such that you'll have a feel of what Canon is holding. Next.
All right, mine is just to thank everyone. I think Victor and I got easy on this panel session. But just to echo what they've said, cybersecurity data privacy is a journey. It's everyone's collective responsibility. And as the president of ISACA, allow me to pitch. Please, if you want to join in as a member, just visit our website, www.isaca.org. We're always happy because what we do is we help professionals build expertise and just develop some of the skills needed in those areas. So welcome to join us.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think just maybe two things. One is that we've had phrases like privacy by design and security by design. I'd like to say human rights by design, because human rights is all encompassing. Is that the correct phrase? It's all, yeah, it encompasses everything. So if we try to look at our processes, our work, our products, our services, to what extent are they promoting human rights? And also to communicate to the public through human rights statements to actually show that we actually committed and report on the level of impact that we are having within our communities of our human rights impact. And I think finally is that KICTANet is a multi-stakeholder community. Feel free to join the list. You can access it on the KICTANet website, kictanet.or.ke, and register. Is a multi-stakeholder platform where people engage on ICT policy issues. And I guess last is that, as has been said, cybersecurity is everybody's responsibility. Let us try within our capabilities and our operations to, do something to make it safe, open, and secure for everybody. Thank you.
Santi sana for my lovely panel and my even more amazing audience that has made my panel stay here a bit longer. But before we leave, thank you very much. And let's stand here for a group photo before. I had promised a panel member that we'd end by 11. I'd like to say sorry to the panel member without mentioning names.
Thank you, great, Rosemary. As I also invite my speakers in the morning, so Matano, please, and Chairman Shim, if you can join this panel for that photo. You know, I felt like taking the stage and speaking to Rosemary in another language, but I realized the military was presiding, so I was well guided. So thank you very much for that panel. Our photographer, you do this quickly. Okay, so thank you very much. We are running behind time because we started late. So I want to invite us for a short tea break as we go through, of course, our booths to see what our sponsors and partners are also doing outside in the booths. So Joel, if you can just lead the team, everyone. So we'll exit, I think, on that door. And then we move around, the booths where we are exhibiting. And we have exactly 15 minutes. So we start back here at exactly 11:30. Thank you and welcome for a quick tea break. That way or this way? Or we use this door, this way.
Recording stopped.